welcome to the Open Paddock RallyCast. This is episode 39, or I guess you could call it episode 38 part 2. For those of you that listened to our previous episode, you'll know that we split this show into two because, well, we jabbered on for way too long to fit it into one. So in this show, we talk more with our co-presenter, Greg Dorman of Subaru Rally Team USA, and we discover how he got into rallying and how he got a job with the top rally team in North America. We then discuss some of the happenings from the New England Forest Rally and lend our opinions, some of them quite strong, in We Are Talking About You from WRC Finland. We also delve a bit into America's RallyCross from their Canada event as well. This is Open Paddock, the RallyCast. Well, I'd like to thank again our friends over at Hammersport Racing. That was George Hammerback, Lewis May, and John. I missed his last name. Sorry, John. But it was awesome having those guys on the show. And we'll try and catch up with them maybe at the end of the season and see how things are going with the development and that project, the BMW. Of course, they will be at Ojibwe. So let's continue on, though. As I said at the top of the show, we have Greg Dorman with us of Subaru Rally Team USA. Greg, I wanted to talk a little bit about you because, we only briefly got to get a bit of an introduction with our ARA live stream that we did. Give us a little bit of your background. How did you get started in rallying, man?
It was quite a while ago. I had friends that was looking for a co-driver for his first event in Poland. It was November of 1995, and I barely had my driver's license then, probably a couple of days after I received it, and I got to co-drive on my first event and got sucked in. We went to help another friend that was going to school with us, and he was part of the Fiat team of Fiat was helping all the young drivers in Poland with providing rally cars for them. It was a Fiat 500, was Fiat 500. Back then, and that's how we started in rallying.
Now, rallying in Poland, I'd have to expect it's quite passionate, the sport there, probably equal to like in England.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Yeah, why are the Polish so passionate about rally? You see it at all events around the world. There are passionate, crazy Polish rally fans at every event.
Yeah, we seem to be passionate to fans, not even about rally, but fans. There's a lot of, soccer is really popular in Poland. And, when we stand behind our people, we tend to go out to events and bring flags and be passionate about it. Yes, rally is also big in Poland, but I would say it's big all over Europe pretty much. We do enjoy it. And although there's very few dirt events, like gravel events in Poland at the moment, I think only 2 left, then, we're still have 8 other events in the Polish Championship on asphalt, and there's tons of others, sort of regional events that you have to go through to get your license to race the Polish Championship.
Wow, so it takes quite a bit to get it, but there's a lot of events there, it sounds like. You're from Poland, came over to the States. How did you then get involved in rallying stateside?
Well, it was actually quite a shock when I first got here. I thought, here we go. This is something I was doing and something that I really, really enjoyed. And when I got here, I was like, I don't know the language. I don't know any people around. How do I find the sport? But I was fortunate enough to find a group of Polish guys in Brooklyn, New York, where, they had a couple Audis, they had a couple Volkswagens, and they were going to these local rallies. And then I was like, oh, great, I'm going to go to one of them. And one of the first events was Maine Forest Rally back then in 1999. And it got sucked in. I saw Stig Blomqvist in Carl Merrill's Ford Escort. I was like, okay, what do I need to do to get in? And in 2001, I was in the first event, a local event in upstate New York with on my friends Piotr Motykiewicz, co-driving in the first event.
Wow, so that was kind of a way that you kind of got yourself integrated, I guess, into the local community, was through Rally.
Yeah, absolutely. Believe it or not, it hugely helped, to just meeting these guys. And, back then it was like Rally forums, and I kind of got connected back through Poland, back to New York. And I was like, oh, great, where are you guys? And there was a body shop in New York, in Greenpoint, where all these guys would meet on Friday night and watch some rally videos on VHS. And yeah. It brings up all the good memories.
Oh, that is awesome. Awesome. Now, you're, of course, up there with, I guess a little bit of your rally background. I mean, you've been competing since then for several years. We were talking about New England Forest Rally. Now, how many times have you done that specific event?
I've done it 7 times, and I had to actually look it up. We were talking about it today. I've done 7 times, and 4 of them was national, and 3 of them were regional. And one of them was actually in the winter. We were able to, that event used to be run as a national in the summer and as a regional in the winter. So I was able to do both.
You come over from Poland, 1999. You enter, you spectate your first rally out here, get involved in the community, start doing co-driving for some events. Then you get somehow involved with Subaru Rally Team USA. Now that's got to be a story on how that happened.
So 2009 and then 2012, I was a championship runner-up for co-drivers in the super production class. Once with Piotr Wiktorczyk and then once with Evan Klein. Both times in Subarus. As a matter of fact, I was just looking at it today. I think the last time I was in other car than Subaru in a national event was 2006. So it was a long history. 80 events later, here I am. But 4 years ago, I was, doing my kind of like hobby side job thing with photography. I went to Troy Revere to photograph the World Championship in RallyCross. Mm-hmm. And I got an email from Christian Dell, who is the marketing director and vice president of Vermont Sports Car. And he's like, hey, let's talk about it. What you can do. Maybe you can join the team. And they were looking for somebody to go with the team to Ojibwe. A couple of weeks later, I was in Ojibwe with the team at my very first event, and that was 4 years ago.
And now your official title is it's not just like photographer. You do a lot more stuff than that.
Yeah, I try to do everything that's needed, really.
That's awesome.
I have a passion for the sport, obviously, and I have a very admire John Botham, who's our team manager. At his age, he's, on top of everything and running around and getting stuff done. And sometimes I kind of tend to jump in and help him out. And I'm sure he appreciates it, a lot of times too. But my main thing is social media, PR, kind of marketing side, and also helping our drivers and navigators to make sure that they have everything they need, that they are prepared to the maximum. But, for example, I would go out there in the middle of recce and meet them and bring them, lunch or,
Oh, I see.
Just in case.
Just make everything
happens,
more efficient.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Exactly. Yeah. The less that the driver and co-driver have to think about during the event, the better, the clearer their mind is, and then the better results are.
But, of course, with your background in co-driving and whatnot, you had a surprise last year after Robbie got hurt, and you ended up sitting next to what ended up being the ARA's first champion.
Yeah, I tell you, I never ever thought driving up to the event and hearing that Robbie has been injured and I was still, on the way to the event. I never thought that there was a chance. We were joking around about it in the car, but never really thought that that is a chance. And Uh, I was having dinner at the brewery down at the bottom of Sunday River, and got a call from actually Craig Drew that said, "Hey, where are you? We need you in the lobby of the hotel. We have to discuss something." And when I walked through the door, Travis Pastrana handed me the suit, and that was it.
That's
So,
brilliant.
Oh, brilliant.
Took a little time to decipher Robbie's notes. I spent some time with him in the restaurant. He was hurting, but he was able to guide me through some of his notes. And let me tell you, I didn't get much sleep that night. It was a lot of excitement.
Well-
This is the story you're going to dine out for a long, long time, isn't it?
Yeah, and all the I tell you, all the pictures started coming up, from a year ago. Here happened this and all that, and it brings up all the memories from that time. I had to turn off the phone, the minute I stepped out, from my hotel room on that morning, just because I knew that my mind has to be so clear, because I knew I have to be on top of my game to get Travis to the finish. I never thought that we had a chance of winning the rally. The plan was to get Travis to the finish.
So, I want to ask though. I mean, you guys, when you did your first stage, competitive stage together, that time wasn't very far off.
Yeah, and I remember like today, the two mistakes that I made that caused Travis to go a little bit wide on my call being late and Travis going a little wide on the road. And then we get to the finish and we just, a couple of seconds off. I'm like, okay, if I can get my stuff together, I can do this. And by the third stage of the day, we knew that we can do it and we can be as fast as David and Craig. As a matter of fact, on the third stage of the rally, it was a longer stage. I believe it was 14 miles or 16-mile stage. And Travis at the start said, okay, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right on the stage. So we were on top of the game. About 3/4 of the stage in, we lost the power steering. But we were able to pull the data from both cars, David's and Travis's, and compare the times. And at the time that our power steering went off, we were 7 seconds faster than David.
7 seconds. Man, that's you must have been just amped. I can't imagine just like eyes bulging out of your head, full of adrenaline.
It brought up a lot of good memories from 2009, where we were working really hard to kind of cut off everything that happens around you when you sit in a rally car and focus only what's in front of you, the book and the road, and that's it. It's really hard because sometimes you catch yourself inside the rally car when you're running, especially a longer stage where your brain is getting tired, that your mind kind of runs away.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's where you make mistakes. That's where you late on a call, and when you're at that speed, that stuff can happen.
I've made a note of this one. The book and the road. I'm going to keep that one ingrained in my memory for Ojibwe as well. So the book and the road.
Good. Just put a little GD next to it.
Yeah,
There you go.
maybe we should get some T-shirts printed.
Sounds good to me. I like it.
I like that. It would be the shirt would look like an open book with like the inside the book would be like pavement. It would look like a road, right? There you go.
Yeah.
Book in the road.
We got the idea going.
Start a trend. Well, that was an awesome experience from me just following from the outside. I can only imagine what it was like on the inside, but obviously you relive it when the pictures start showing and stuff. That's awesome.
I watched that launch control a million times, so a lot of those views are mine.
Oh, I love that. I would totally want to re-experience that as well. What a crazy event. Obviously, that can't happen again now with the switching of co-drivers. Well, I guess you could do it for seat time, but you wouldn't get any points if it happened again. But still, that was a cool experience, and the way that you were able to quickly adapt, that was cool. That was just so many kinds of cool. And
Certainly an amazing experience. And on the tough event too, because I know that you want to talk about New England Forest Rally and about some roads that are there.
yeah,
Especially the roads that are on Saturday, they can really get you. And so the notes that you wrote about the show and what you want to talk about, and the rocks which you're coming up the road, and especially when you're doing recce and you're on regular speed and you're like, oh wow, how are we gonna go through this? There's like orange on top of orange on top of orange, because the crews that are going through the stages at the New England Forest Rally before the recce, they spray paint this bright orange on these big rocks that are sticking out of the ground. But then when you're at the car, when you're at speed, you tend to kind of focus on that rock that's sticking out of the road rather than looking forward ahead. And that's kind of distracting, in my opinion, to the drivers. But yeah, sometimes you get a lot of flats. That's why I was impressed with the guys that you were talking to at the BMW, with a Hammer Sport Racing. They only got it one flat, and really it was caused by their off rather than, on the stage. So stuff roads, they're a lot nicer now than they were back in the years. Obviously, Conquer Pond is, a spectacular stage and probably one of the best ones in the U.S.
So these painted rocks, then, are these the baby heads that people have been telling me about?
They're big babies, let me tell you.
Small children sometimes, not just
Yeah.
babies. Yeah, that's a term I've heard several times from the area. Is that some of the local guys, they do call them baby heads, because it's these domed, rocks that are. It's like the road is growing rocks. They just kind of jet up, but they're not necessarily sharp edged ones, right? They're kind of a little more rounded, but they are plentiful. And like you said, Greg, there is on, you'll be on recce or if you're going at speed, it's probably just a blur of orange sometimes, because there's so many of those things. And it makes me wonder with somebody that's running, let's say, a limited two-wheel drive, or something that's definitely more production based, like those guys from Hammersport. Do you try and dodge every one of those things, or you just put in the notes like, well, here's the best line, and I know I'm going to hit X many of them, which is fewer than if I went this line. But oh man,
it's so tough, and it's really tough to tell sometimes, because sometimes it's easier or better to just go at them at speed, and you hit them, especially with a rally tire that can take a lot more than a street tire.
right?
But sometimes in the suspension, like I guess these guys were they're using OEM suspension. It's really tough when you really hit one, then even your back is gonna feel it.
Right, right. Well, and I guess that's one of the things, for this event, Travis was saying that, they got to a section where the car was just dancing as it was going along. And I'm guessing that's kind of just going from one of those orange painted rocks to another, just kind of bouncing along them, just kind of floating along. But of course, the suspension that SRT USA runs well, there is no match for that, right? I mean, it's the top end stuff.
Yeah, well, whatever Barry McKenna runs, and I'm not sure what suspension is on his Fiesta. Obviously we saw him on a jump, and that suspension can take a lot, and the landing was pretty spectacular, and the car looked, beautiful. The suspension travel is what's really, really working for these guys, for us, for our cars, for supercars, and for Barry. But then you got, guys like Jeff Seahorn, and, his suspension is also, upgraded, and also, a good quality, but the travel is a lot less. And that's where, the huge difference comes in.
And I guess we want to talk just real quick about that jump. You were there with me, and there are a couple of exciting moments from that one. I don't think either of us, I mean, we saw Barry jump last year, and it was pretty big. I don't think any of us had an idea what he was going to do this year. That almost scared me.
Yeah, when you're standing on the side of the road, and, we weren't really that close to the road, and you see this car take off, and you're seeing entire underbody of the car pretty much almost over your head, then it's like, wow, that was pretty spectacular. That was like Finland-like.
Yeah, it was seriously Finland-like, and that's what they say about Concord Pond, right? It is the most Finnish-like stage out there, with it having constant crests and turns. Well, crests in a turn, which makes it kind of have that kind of look and feel to something like that. But it's not that long of a road. Concord Pond's what, like 6 miles, maybe 5?
Yeah, just about 5. Yeah, 4. I think the stage is 4.8 or somewhere around there. But yeah, it's just a lot of jumps, and the stage used to have even more jumps back in the day. They kind of been shaved off over the years, some of the jumps. A lot of guys like, the name for some of the guys that are listening, Chris Duplessis knows this road very, very well. He used to live not too far from there. And, then he probably didn't even need a co-driver on this road. And some of the jumps that he was taking in his R2 Fiesta on that road were pretty spectacular, what he could have done in that little car.
Speaking of two-wheel drive cars on that jump, one that was really spectacular also to see, because he had quite the moment, was that Lexus, which is also a unique car, the Lexus IS 350 that Michael Hooper has, and so he's running that in open two-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive car out there. Boy, he had a bit of a moment when he went over the first time.
Yeah, sort of ditch hooking the other way. He definitely touched the edge of the road there, and when I think about him and his car, I find I match it to the guys that you were just talking to, the BMW. It's a rare car, and the way that he drives it and the way that he handles it, it's really, really spectacular. For his not long of an experience in a rally car, from what I know, he's doing very, very good.
Yeah. Alexis, wait a minute.
It is
Alexis.
Yep.
Okay, I guess you can rally absolutely anything you like, then, can't you? I guess we just got to wait for a Rolls Royce to get out there now.
You learn stuff every day.
Yeah.
I guess it's all just putting the time and effort into building it out to something that can be competitive. When we talked to Michael Hooper, actually, he was saying that he got underneath one of these. I guess he does a lot with Toyotas, and he got underneath and looked at how the multi-link suspension on the rear of it was, or whatever, and he said, "Wow, this looks strong and would work well for rally." So that's why he ended up with one of those. So all right, cool. Impressive to have something different out there, and he comes all the way up from Tennessee, I think. So another long haul competitor, and great to see him out there. There was a lot of unique stuff out there. Actually, one thing that I hadn't seen in a long time at a rally. We have some even older versions way out here out west, but we had Pascal Belperin of Team O'Neill. He actually got to rally for once instead of crew chief. He was out there in a Saab 900. Now, Saabs, those used to rally all over the place all the time, didn't they, Greg?
Yeah, not as many in Poland, but Scandinavia has tons of them. And it was great to see Pascal in the car. I know that he ran Mount Washington 2 years ago, I think it was.
Last year, 2017.
It was last year.
Mount Washington Hill Climb. Yeah.
Correct. And I'm not sure if it was the same car, but he enjoys being in the car. I know that he does some little events at the rally sprints at the Team O'Neill Rally School. There's always something going on there. So glad to see him in a real rally, and glad to hear him enjoying being behind the wheel.
Anybody who rallies a Saab is okay in my books. Doesn't matter if it's a 900. I prefer older, of course, but anybody in a Saab is good in my books.
Well, here. We like seeing the classics out there for sure. One of the other classics we saw is that a proper Ford Escort RS 1800. Frank Cunningham. He's one of the guys that's from Ireland. And I guess he was encouraged to come out here. I think he's friends with Seamus Burke. And he competes normally in Ireland, and he had the car shipped over here to the States. He was out at STPR as well, and I got to talking with him, and he says he plans on doing the entire championship in 2019. He really likes rallying here in the States, so
Uh-huh.
the Escort RS 1800 will stay here and
Awesome.
compete more. So
Uh-huh.
he didn't have a good day on Saturday, the final day. He had some issues and didn't want to chat with us. We were as everybody was kind of getting ready to pull into the service. He wasn't really up for chatting. So hopefully we'll see it Ojibwe. If not, like I said, we'll see it definitely the whole championship next year, which is really cool. So more classic cars from Europe being here in the States. I'm a fan.
Yeah, it's great to see. I hope that Joe Burke joins Seamus and Frank here and kind of travels with them around the country and does his full championship as well.
Oh, that's right, Joseph Burke. That's right. He's he's quick. Doesn't he have an Evo beast of a machine that he's been working on?
Yeah, and I believe he competed in a couple of events this year, and I think he did one down south with Claudia pulling as a co-driver, and I'm not sure if he did one in Missouri, but yeah, speaking of long travel suspension, and that car has a pretty substantial drop on their suspension.
One other thing I just wanted to mention that we saw out there of folks just kind of we were looking around, and of all things, we ran into Savage Dave Wallingford after his accident and whatnot. We haven't seen him. He's been recovering and whatnot, and he was out there observing, and he actually got to do a bit of a test out at Team O'Neill to see how things were going as he recovers with his back injury. And actually went a lot better than he thought, which is really good news.
Yeah, I saw him briefly at after the event, after the champagne spray, and shook his hand, and really glad to see him back on his feet and recovering. It's really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was good to see him. Good to see him back at events, taking in the atmosphere, and hopefully he's missing it a lot.
If you follow his Facebook feeds,
Yep.
he's painfully missing it. He couldn't keep away. He wanted to be competing so bad, but just being there, though, was really cool, and really he enjoyed, yeah, you're right, the atmosphere and whatnot. He wants to be in a car bad. So moving on with the other stuff with this rally, obviously the big news from the New England Forest Rally was, unfortunately, the loss of the Kazi. Ken Block, we were excited to see him out there. Unfortunately, his first run over the jump was kind of not very exciting, but the second jump he did was pretty cool. But then they get out there to the rough stages, and maybe, Greg, you can tell us about that loop of stages. You do, was it South Arm first, and then you double back and do Icicle Brook, is that right?
Correct. It's a dead end stage, so it's a turnaround stage. You do the south arm, you go in, and then you turn around, you wait pretty much hour and a half till everybody is done with the stage, and then you head back. The only difference in the way back and how it was run this year is there's a kind of a loop of a 2-track rough part of the stage, and really not enjoyable especially for co-drivers. It's really tight, it's twisty, it's not a lot of speed. So once you get there, it's probably about I'm gonna say 4.5, 5 miles, and once you get out of that, it's kind of like you're feeling like almost on the highway. It's the three cars wide stage after that, and yeah, it's very, very, very tough loss. I mean, I have to say, pretty much every mechanic on our team, every team member from the Subaru team, was devastated once we heard the news, because even though we're competing against each other, and it was tough battles along the years, we really enjoyed that car. We're looking at it at the stage, looking at it at the Park Expos, and it was really, really tough to see. Losing it.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess for those that don't know, it was kind of a mechanical problem that instigated the whole situation, right? It was, from what I recall, the sequential gearbox wasn't shifting when he move the lever.
Yeah, I think if you dissect the video, there is a moment, probably about a second or so, where before he hits a rock, where the car actually goes in neutral, and I believe that
Oh, wow.
the force that was carrying through the turn got him closer to that rock, and that's why he clipped it. That's what it seems like to me from just watching the video over and over again. But yeah, it's really tough, really tough.
Now, have you ever been in a car that's had a fire before, even just a minor one?
Yes, 2010 100-acre rally. It was the first real stage of the event, and about 3.5 miles in, we just got a turbo blown out, and it sprayed oil all over the engine bay. Deployed 3 fire extinguishers on it, and the fire was still going. I stopped Nate Conley. It was a couple, a husband and wife, driving a yellow bug-eye Subaru station wagon, and I stopped them on the stage, and I grabbed the fire extinguisher from their car, and it was able to extinguish the fire, but it was really close. So I can understand what Ken and Alex were feeling, and having memories of Nick Roberts' car, just from a couple of years ago in Morgan. Sometimes it's just tough, and once the fire gets going, everything is so hot from going on the stage, and it's really, really tough to put it out.
Well, I figured that in 4 years, I've witnessed 4 different cars completely burned down to the ground. Really, 3 of those were in the last year and a half. The first one in that group was Nick Roberts. He was just down the stage from where I was volunteering for Oregon Trail. Then we had Chris Sear last year at STPR.
Yep.
He was competing, and his Fiesta that he was running in, that cooked to the ground. Then it was also at Oregon Trail. We had Tino Fortunato's car that burned down to the ground this year, and then we had the Kazi. So I don't know if it's just bad luck, or you always have this. I mean, you're dealing with the race car that's dealing with fuel and oil, and there's oil from suspension that can get on hot brakes. There's all kinds of things that can happen. I mean, I guess not too unusual, but do you think there's any way they can really prevent these fires, or is it more about management?
Yeah, I haven't been close to Tino's fire or the Fiesta fire, but judging from Nick's perspective on Nick Roberts' car, I don't think there was anything that they could have done it to save that car. Absolutely, that was just a kind of almost a freak accident from the puncturing the gas tank on it. As far as Ken's car, it really depends. You would have to have a fire almost investigator to see what happened exactly under the engine bay that it really exploded to a fire like that. I don't think that any of these fires could have been avoided, really, of what how the rules are and what we are dealing with.
I mean, even in the case of Ken's car, I mean, sure, he's got a fuel cell. I mean, but it wasn't the fuel cell that went. This was under the hood that really kind of started it all. So, well, once it gets going and you got high pressure fuel lines and things like that, unless you can get it out in a hurry, I guess that's the key. But they used to have, I know in the WRC or whatever, they used to have like Halon, which is evil stuff. It'll put out a fire. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the stuff is super caustic. It is bad news chemicals. So we don't use stuff like that anymore.
From what I understand, it kind of kills the oxygen in the air, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what we don't want to carry fire extinguishers like that in the car, just in case if you puncture from underneath the car or in any way, and you puncture through that fire extinguisher, that crew is pretty much out of luck.
Yeah, it's going to take all their oxygen away. Not so good.
Mhm.
Yeah, we wouldn't want that to happen either. Exactly. So, yeah, it just makes us wonder, those, like, gosh, it seems like we've seen a frequency of these, but again, part of this is we see it more easily now with social media being able to spread this stuff, and it could be just some just bad luck, but, I think if there was one thing that I would say is we are rallying at forests, and that's a concern. The car isn't as much of a concern, to be honest. Obviously, we want to get enough time that the competitors get out safely. That's the number one thing. Number one is safety. But number two would probably be protecting the areas that we're competing in, or we don't get to compete there again. The fact that these fire trucks came in and were able to use a foam to get the fire put out from Ken's car, even though it's already burnt to the ground, makes me think that, wonder if we should have maybe the sweep crew keep some sort of like foam type stuff that they could deploy in that type of, if it's that bad, right? Maybe they could have a foam extinguisher of some sort, maybe at the back of the field when they're called in, can prevent maybe forest and other stuff from catching fire or something like that. That's kind of the only bit of advice I could come up with. But yeah, I don't know if there's really anything that you can do for prevention.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, like I said, I've been there. I've worked hard on putting the fire out with the extinguishers that we've had on board, and sometimes it's tough. Sometimes it's not enough. Even if you're doing a good job.
What about you, Ian? You've ever had to deal with a fire?
Not yet. No, luckily no. But I worked in an industry where halon was the standard firefighting material, and yeah, I know how dangerous it is, and it's, but there does not seem, other than a foam, there doesn't really seem to be any really good alternative. Halon, it does what it does so well because it removes the oxygen from the fire, and if the fire doesn't have any oxygen, it can't burn, and there isn't any other substance quite like that. I mean, a foam smothers the fire, and that way blocks blocks any combustion. But yeah, there's nothing quite like halon, even though it's as bad as it is. Yeah.
Sucks to lose the Kazi, for sure, but the rally did go on. Folks had a little bit of a tough time, I think, transiting out, from what I remember hearing. There's no cell signal there, so and the notes they all had was for going back down the original stage route, which was closed because of the fire. So I guess they had to go out an alternate logging road to get back out to the main highway, and some people got it right, some people got it wrong, and those that got it wrong arrived at service very late in the evening, unfortunately. That's kind of frustrating for those folks. But the only other big thing I think I would say that came out of New England, as far as, until we get to kind of results here, was dust issues. The top guys got a bigger dust window to start out with, and those farther back still had just 1 minute windows, I believe, and it was dust hanging in the air. There was just no wind. With a field of 50 plus cars, you got volunteers that are going to be out there for forever if you keep extending those windows, huh?
That's a tough one. It's like you've got to give everybody a fair crack at the whip for a clear road. But I mean, it's the same sort of thing as in Finland. On the first day in Finland, we'll talk about Finland in a bit. But there was a lot of hanging dust on early stages there, and it was totally weird, because you would be driving along, and you'd get to a sheltered part surrounded by trees, and the dust would just stick there. Whereas you could go around the corner, and there would be a clearing, and the dust was gone. So it's difficult to know what to do in that state. You've got to give everybody a fair crack, but is a 3-minute dust window going to be enough? I've been in situations in the forest in Minnesota here, and you've had a 2-minute dust window, and it's just not enough. You need 3, and then you wonder, what would 3 minutes be enough? So it's a very awkward thing.
If you don't have wind, sometimes 3 minutes, well, it's not going to help you either.
Yeah.
It's only that first guy on the road is gonna have a clear, fresh air.
Yeah, 3 minutes, 3 hours. I guess if it's just gonna hang there, it's just gonna hang there. I mean, yeah. Uh, the one think I felt the worst for was probably for Sam Albert because he was the first of the cars with the shorter window behind Seahorn, and he's competing for a championship against him.
Mhm.
And that's got to be frustrating because how are you supposed to make up the time to someone you're competing against for a championship when he's got an advantage that you don't? Silence. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. What can you say? I mean, it is like I say, it's tough. It's difficult. It's not going to be fair. It's not going to be fair at all for everyone. So, and you've just got to. You've got to think that there are other people there. If you've got what you say, you had 50 cars at New England. I mean, 50 cars at a 3-minute window. That's that's what 50, that's 150 minutes. That's like 2.5 hours to get all the cars through the stage. And if you're saying that one stage there was like out and back, we're South Arm and Icicle Brook. I mean, the first cars would go down there and wait 2.5 hours plus before they had to turn around and come back. So, yeah, I don't know what the right way to go about something like that is, but I guess we never will.
That's rally,
Yeah.
Well, and I guess what I was going to say is it's by speed factor, right? If I remember correctly, the reason why those dust windows are given for anybody over a certain speed factor, I think it's is the 80 or something like that, and I think that Sam Albert's just kind of below that still. And the thing is, I keep thinking, it's like, well, how does he ever get above that speed factor if he's got this thing that keeps holding him back from that? I don't know. Of course, I don't know all the maths that go into the speed factors because I'm sure there's some sort of convoluted thing in there that has to do with not only finishing position, but finishing of stage times and things like that. So
only a thing for co-drivers.
You're right. You guys are all good at all the math stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so good to see Sam and Michelle, doing the full championship in a Third Fish car. We need more and more competitors like him, like Jeff, like Travis Neese, to get these privateers going against each other and creating that fight. I'll go back again to when I was doing the full championship in 2009, where we had 5, 6, 7 SP super production cars back then that any one of us could win the event, and to a point where we were making bets and who's going to win the next stage. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really good.
I'm all for more of that. That's for sure. You're right. There's not enough people in that class yet. I think there's more people hopefully coming. And those Hammersport guys want to get there at some point. So more power to them. Let's do it. A great class of cars, a lot of good competition, starting to get up there. It's a new car to Sam and the team. It runs a little bit different. I remember how much he had to adapt to it. His driving style had to change because of the way the motor works better at higher RPM, and adjusting the engine cuts for the sequential gearbox, which was new to him, and stuff like that. So definitely some new things for him to get used to. And in the same, I guess, somewhat in the same thing as Jeff Seahorn, he actually had a sequential gearbox himself for the first time for this event. So he did an upgrade to his car, and it did a little bit of lightening. I think the windows are now no longer glass. I think they're Alexan or something like that. So bits of improvements going on with those cars that still meet within the requirements. With that limited four-wheel drive podium, obviously Jeff Seahorn, Karen Jankowski, amazing result again. Right up there at winning the class, but not without a little bit of a challenge. They actually had a starter issue where they had to keep the engine running. It's not always easy for those guys, is it?
POR, price on regardless.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. He was telling me that he was using an old trick of, I think it was using the old screwdriver across the starter to battery or whatever it was to kick it going. So there was something going on that just wasn't quite working right. But, he made it to the end. They made it to the top of the podium for their class. Travis Neese, and wow, what can you say? He says it himself. He's the broken record. He plays it safe. He drives within his limits. But look at that. Second on the podium again in class. That consistency pays off, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And with the Subaru contingency, if you're planning to do the full championship and you travel around the country to do all these events, Subaru contingency is what you're, almost like expect, right? So if you're running consistent event and you're bringing these results in, it adds up at the end of a season to get that contingency from Subaru.
Yeah, the contingency is a huge thing for sure, and we're very happy to see it, and we hope to see more and more vehicles that'll be a part of it, because we'd love to see more manufacturers do it. I know there's a little bit of funds that Ford is doing with Ford Performance. Heck, I think there's still, obviously there's all the contingency stuff with all the tires, and those add up.
Yeah.
So you got Maxxis tires, Cooper tires, and Hoosier tires are all involved now. So, yeah, I mean, every little bit, of course, helps when it comes to competing in a full season. So,
yeah, I'll wait for the Lexus contingency.
Right. See if Toyota has something.
I tell you, I try every year, and I write to Chris Yandel in December and January. I'm like, hey, Chris, maybe this year, maybe BRZ. How about that? And we haven't got through that yet, but we're working on it.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Get a BRZ out there. That's that's awesome to see. Claudia Poland and Eric Potts. Eric's been really consistent in that car. I know he's had a few niggling issues here and there, but boy, he supercharged that thing, and it ain't slow. It's definitely fun to see that car.
And not a rookie in the championship, doing the full championship. And I'm, looking forward to see what he does at Ojibwe. He still has to think about the bigger picture, which is the full championship. But, he's getting better acclimated with the car. And as you said, the supercharger now, he's done well at New England, which is his home rally. Great job so far this year.
But you have to really give it to Seamus Burke. Wow, the Escort Mustang engined car, that put on one hell of a performance at New England.
Oh, absolutely. It just even looking at just the jump that we were at Conker Pond, you can tell like they were on it. Martin and Seamus they've been working together for quite a while, back in the Evo and now in the Escort. The car is built really well. They went through, the learning curves last year. Now it seems like they have it all figured out. Overall podium at STPR, 4th overall here, both wins in the classes. Amazing.
Yeah, they're quite the team. I'm hoping to see them do more and more. I know they mostly just do the East Coast events, but it'd be great to see them maybe do an entire championship at some point, because they've obviously got the pace to do it in that open two-wheel drive class. But speaking of the two-wheel drives, touching on the limited two-wheel drive and the others that were in the open two-wheel drive, it was actually kind of interesting to see that Jordan Guitar, him and William Jang were in the little Maxxis Tires HPD Honda Civic. They were actually the third fastest of all the two-wheel drive cars that entered in National anyway. Here they are in just a mostly stock little Civic, and they always finish so well. It's like Travis Neese, in a two-wheel drive car, but Jordan's actually got a little bit more experience, I think, out on some of those stages. He's been competing with that HPD team for a long time.
Consistency is the key. I'm glad to see that the Honda HPD team is still pushing and still bringing some other new cars and still putting some other different drivers in the car. It's awesome.
Yeah, because it was Robinson that used to run the car a couple years ago, and it's been and Jordan, I believe, was his co-driver, right? And so now I think it's Jordan that's been competing.
And you know, sometimes they bring guest drivers, and I believe it was last year at New England where we had Acura team drivers from their road racing track. So, you know, driving the rally. So
right,
it's really,
that was a couple of years ago. Yeah, back with Rally America, they had their star car they were doing, the little Honda Fit, and actually that was something that was a perfect segue for me because I went to the Rose Cup races here in Portland where they featured the Pirelli World Challenge, and one of those Acura drivers is Ryan Eversley. And I don't know if any of you have ever listened to a show called Dinner with Racers. It's a great podcast. It's very highly entertaining where they talk about all kinds of people in the racing world, not always just talking about racing, but all kinds of interesting things. Well, Ryan Eversley is one of the guys on that show, and he's a professional race driver with what is their race team called? Now I'm going to lose it. But they drive the Acura cars. He's a factory Honda Acura driver. He races the TCR class of the Civic Type R.
Real-time racing?
Real-time racing, thank you. Gosh, I feel like an idiot for forgetting that. But I ran into him at Portland, and I had to run up to him, and I said, hey, I know you got an experience in a rally car. Would you ever like to do that again? And he's like, that is the most fun I've had behind the wheel of a car in so long. He's like, he honestly was saying, like, I'm kind of done with the circuit stuff. I've been doing this for so long. That is what I want to do. I want to do rally. If Honda would build me a car, you know, and to drive, I'd be all over it in a heartbeat. So I don't know what we need to do to get this to happen, but we want Ryan Eversley in rally racing. It would be mega.
It's awesome. And, you know, the connection here, when I remember real-time racing, David Higgins' number one mechanic, Sean Jacobs, works now for real-time racing and works on the Acura cars.
Oh, well, that's really cool. What a small world. You know, the racing community, you know, it seems kind of shrink. There's always these little connections of different people there. So that's awesome. Anyways, great job by Jordan Guitar, HPD, Honda Performance Development. Build another rally car and bring Ryan Eversley over. That would be just great. In the other part of the podium with the two-wheel drive, we had Lucy Block and Krista Skoukas were third on the podium. It was cool to see Lucy and Krista there. You know, Ken stuck around instead of leaving early because his wife ended up on the podium. So that's her second podium after podiuming over here at Oregon Trail. So love to see the husband-wife team out there both competing. I mean, yeah, it's the Blocks, but they're still a family. They love rallying and spreading that passion. So it's just really cool. I'm going to kind of move on down here to kind of the last little bits. You were mentioning McKenna, probably, wow, I think he's right there. I think he can bring it to the Subaru guys. He won almost every stage on Saturday, Greg. Are the Subaru guys starting to get a little concerned now?
Maybe not concerned, but you know, we always knew that Barry is there. We almost laughing at David here because David gave lessons to Barry just about 2 years ago. You know, in England, and now we were saying like, hey man, you're just like taught him a little bit too much. But no, he's doing great, and you know what, we're welcome his performance with open arms because that's what makes it more interesting for our team and for competition and for the series as well. It's great, and I hope that his luck kind of turns around and he gets more podiums and, you know, maybe up top of the podium somewhere out there.
Yeah, like I said, he definitely had the pace for this one. We all know it takes time and experience at these roads and seat time. And boy's getting a lot of it because he's still leading the Irish Forest Rally. He won another event there, I think, just like a week ago or something. And so he's definitely putting the time in. A little bit different car. He's running an R5 over there, but it's not worldly, a huge amount of difference in that you can still translate that stuff into what he'd be competing with here. So, wow, yeah, it should be getting just that much more exciting, which is awesome. But he had that brake disc explosion. I guess his brakes failed basically, and ended up having to come to service early on after stage 3. Super rallied, ended up not on the podium, but those guys, they do put in the work, and it's great to see them out there, and it's great to see them stick around and compete the rest of the event. I'm glad we've got Super Rally back. Are you a fan of Super Rally, Greg?
Yes. I mean, I think there's enough penalties that you get from Super Rally that prevent someone like Barry or David or Travis to even though they miss a couple of stages and they get back through like day 2 and get back on a podium. David has done it, but the rules were a little bit different. I think it's pretty good right now with the penalties that you get, and yeah, I'm a fan just because you'll see, and the fans get to see the car on the second day of the rally.
Yeah, that's it. That's the thing, isn't it? It's like the fans come out to see the big names, and if they're off in the first day and they don't there isn't the facility there for them to return, then there's no fan interest. So yeah, anything that keeps fans coming back to the stages, that's the best thing.
And we've seen it at New England Forest Rally that having Travis and Ken together at the same event, we could really see the difference of the fan base that was at the rally and watching.
Travis Pastrana, he was there. He was trying to be right there with David, but once you got to the longer stages of South Arm and Icicle Brook, he did say he had some dust issues to deal with as well, but he was saying that just the pace that David and Craig put on was just phenomenal. I guess it's one of those where, kind of like you were saying, Greg, earlier, is that when you get to that long stage, that's where you can really put on the push and just create that gap and then manage it?
Yeah, I believe so. There's also a thing that some of the teams and drivers and co-drivers do. They pick a stage or two of the event, and if they know that the other drivers that they're going against them, they're not really particularly like that stage, and they don't always do good on that stage, that's the stage that the other team is going to focus on. So they're going to do the
look for the weaknesses.
Yes, exactly, and that's where you hit, and that's exactly what happened at New England, is where David and Craig were able to kind of bring everything they got to basically one stage and put 40 seconds on Travis and Robbie.
Oh.
Yeah, well, now 20 seconds of that was Travis said he blew through a junction and had to turn around and come back. He totally missed it in the dust. That's still a 20-second gap on one stage, which is huge. So
right on a 16 miler stage, so or 13 miler stage. Yeah, it's big.
Jeez. That's just massive. That's breathtaking.
Oh, yeah, that's a cool piece of insight. No, I never thought about that. I thought about it that way.
So there you go. Now you need to talk to your driver when you go to a jibway there, and see which stage you're going to want to try and dominate over your competitors. See who you're closest with, and say, I think they're not going to be as good on that one. There you go.
And we talked about it on the Conquer Pond, the prize money for winning Conquer Pond for regional guys, right? This is kind of like to think that you got the regional guys going for. So I'm sure some of them were like, okay, I have to go because there's $300 waiting for me at the finish.
That's true. I love that Team O'Neill was doing this thing. So that it was basically, you had a 1, 2, 3. If whoever won the first there's only normally aspirated 4, open 2-wheel drive, and limited 2-wheel drive. And you had to be entered as regional only, not dual entered, not national. Anyways, of those guys, the winner got $400, $200, $100, or something like that for the one stage. And then on the next day, there was more winnings for winning the whole regional event day for the New Hampshire Rally, which was the Saturday day event. So dollars going out to these regional guys. Not huge amounts of dollars, but hey, $500 here, $400 there. Do we think we need to see more of these little dollar winnings for these regional guys?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A case in point is like the guy that I co-driven for the past, just over the past year, Bill Morenich. He's taken a year. He's taken this year off, and he's built himself a dirt track late model, and he had his first race meeting the other weekend. Yeah, and he, even though he only finished midfield in the A main final, he still came away. He still came away with money. You know, it's and any little bit helps. I mean, rally is an expensive sport. I mean, you can go out there and you can write your car off any day, or you can break your suspension, anything. You've got to find the money to make the repair to go out there the next time. And anywhere you can get some money to help offset anything, even if it's or even tires, you know, it all costs money. And if you can get some cash from somewhere from the event to help further your progress in any championships, then it's no bad thing.
I don't disagree. I mean, I'd love to see more of this kind of thing myself as well. You know, I know that, you know, $200 isn't going to hardly pay for maybe more than one tire, but I think you're right. Just this little bit, I think, shows that they can at least get something. And it's interesting just having this focus being just on the regional guys too. They seem to be so jazzed about this thing. There's a whole bunch of stuff on the North American Rally Updates page, you know, the Facebook group, of folks wanting to create their own pool, and you know, for folks to compete against each other.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
A little sub championship, I guess, that has some sort of payout. Yeah. I think it's just a great thing. Yeah,
and then you look at somebody like TJ Pullen, Pullen Away Race Team. He's found himself in the a position he didn't expect to be in, hasn't he? He's challenging for, is it the East Regional title? And he wasn't expecting to be in that position, so he didn't budget in his season to go to a Ojibwe where he could end up winning the title. So they've set up crowdfunding to raise the money to go to a Ojibwe. I think he's got some $1,500 raised online, so people are clubbing together and financing to get him to go out there. You know, where, you know, if there was extra money for these guys at the regional events, it's not going to pay to go to a Ojibwe, but it's going to mean that you have to find less to make the trip.
Competing in a championship is hard. You know, it's going to be expensive. It's going to be difficult to do, but you know, it's great to see that the excitement of a regional championship for him, you know, is enough for him to try and take that next step to try and pull together those extra funds. Crowdsourcing is always tough, because if everybody does it, then it's going to be a limited pool of funds to get from. To be honest, you know, the reality is you want to try and get sponsors or things like that to obviously pay for some of that stuff, but that could come in time for sure. You know, they've got a great team, that Pulling Away rally team. One thing that really got me is on the Saturday at New England, they did an entire engine change in 1 hour. Now, Greg, that's a struggle even for Subaru to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's doable for our guys to do a 1 hour engine change, but there could be a lot of tripping over each other. Usually when the engine change happen, and it doesn't happen anymore during the ARA events, but we used to do it in Rally America. It's usually overnight, so there's usually no rush. But there are, for example, gearbox changes that are within 17 minutes and 19 minutes. So that's very, very impressive to see a regional team to do an engine change in an hour. That's awesome.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing them definitely at Ojibwe. I think they said that they've got the funds, I think, to get there. They've just got some work on the car they got to finish up with the time that's available that they got to hurry up and get done. So, and of course, there's the seasoned folks out there, but there's also new people that are always competing out there. One of the ones I just want to give a quick shout out to was the Iron Oxide Racing team, Elizabeth Moen and Jordan Mellum. I listened to some friends of mine that are part of the Auto Off Topic podcast. They're from up there in the Northeast. That's kind of their home rally is New England. It was these folks' first ever stage rally, and it was pretty cool to see them out there for the first time in a little VW Golf they got that was already rally prepped from Canada, but they bought it just this last winter, worked on it all spring, did a couple of rally sprints, broke things, fixed things that broke, and did their first ever stage rally. And one of the great stories that came out of that, and I suggest everybody listen to that podcast because it's pretty cool, is like the girl that's the driver, her dad was out at the rally, and for the first time seeing her compete, and she slides the car and backs it into a telephone pole right in front of him. Hey, Dad! So I thought that was kind of funny. The stories that come out from rallies are just always awesome. But they still finished. Not too much trouble after that, I don't think. They had some other little things. I think some electrical stuff that they ended up having to get fixed. But they still ended up finishing, and that's always the big deal, as we always talk about. But any final thoughts on New England, folks?
Always hot.
Yes, it is always hot.
You guys were there. I'll have to take your word for it. Maybe one day, maybe next year, I'll get out there.
Well, let's hammer on through real quick. WRC Finland. We're not going to go over any results stuff per se, but there was definitely some interesting things that came out of there that I do want to discuss because some of it even is similar to what issues that we have here with Stage Rally in the U.S. Most notably was that with WRC Finland, they changed the roads quite a bit. And one of the reasons why they changed that is because of the cars going faster, they wanted to keep below an 80 mile per hour average limit. We saw that there were chicanes at New England. There's chicanes that we had at Oregon Trail. Nobody liked chicanes. They had them last year in Finland. So they changed the route to use roads that were not what we're used to seeing. Not as big jumps and super fast speeds. Thoughts on whether 80 miles per hour limit actually makes things safer?
Well, it's not the going fast that causes the damage, is it? It's stopping. It's the stopping that causes the damage. So, I mean, 80 mile an hour is an hour. I don't know. Is 80 miles an hour average too fast? Or is it too slow? I think that the organisers are beholden to bean counters in insurance companies, and they've made that decision, and it needs to be proved to people who insure events that faster speeds can be safer.
I agree. I guess it is a lot of it is with the insurance companies, and that might be not so much with Europe, but especially here in US. With WRC, I think with so much aero on these cars right now, and how they handle and how fast they are, this has to be some other limitations, right? And if the road allows you to really fly on it, literally, then yeah, there's got to be some other ways to slow down the car.
But you guys know that the 2016 era car top speed was actually faster, right?
Yeah.
Because it didn't have all the aero.
Right.
The aero creates a lot of downforce and therefore more turbulence, and so its top speed actually wasn't the same. Acceleration's definitely better on the new car.
Right.
It's those, I guess, the high speed corners that it can definitely do a heck of a lot faster on. Maintaining that momentum through those corners with all that aero stuff for sure. In their new generation of these cars, they made the interior cabins a little bit larger, right? Mm-hmm. So they put more space between the driver and the co-driver, and they beefed up the doors have a lot more safety features in those. There's all kinds of stuff that I've heard they've done to increase the safety of the safety cell, I guess you'd call it, of the driver and co-driver area, and yet they keep still wanting to slow the cars down, and it's just something that, to me, it's like, well, we've done these steps that makes them safer, that they can go fast. Why do you keep trying to limit that then? Because, the safety stuff's been done now. Obviously, you don't want to test the limits too much, but we've seen what can happen in a high-speed crash, and for the most part, folks have been okay from those.
Yeah. Perhaps right from the start, they compared them too much to Group B. This was the new Group B, and what most people think about with Group B is how many people got killed in that era. So it's like maybe we're living a little bit on the image that was created beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, the safety was definitely different back then. I had a privilege of riding in a Audi Group B car, and the amount of and the amount of roll cages around you it was a lot less than what we have even now here in US in roll cages. But it was a Bruno Kreibisch. I don't know if that name tells you anything. Bruno Kreibisch was John Bofum's teammate back in the date with Audi team here in US. I believe from 83 to 87 or somewhere around there. And two of those cars, luckily, were in Queens, New York, and one of them was in the hill climb kind of asphalt setup, and I was able to get a ride in it.
Wow, that's mega. That's cool. But yeah, I think you're right. We have all these other safety features now that are different. If the image is like, yes, we've gotten back to Group B as far as performance, well, that's fine, but that's only on the performance side, maybe, not the danger side. And we also have to think back the Group B era. A lot of it wasn't just the drivers that were getting killed; it was spectators.
Yeah.
We managed spectators differently. So, I think the excitement part from Group B is great. All the danger of it is not so great. So we got to be careful on how we, apply that image to the modern era cars for sure. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Ian. It's definitely because of insurance companies. I think they're looking for metrics. They need some sort of number or something that they can use to quantify safety.
It's 3 or 4 years, well, maybe 2 or 3 years with no serious accidents and injuries. Then we'll probably the insurance people will probably change their metrics a little bit, and they'll see their way to raising the speed limit, the average speed.
Have you ever seen an insurance company ever do that? Come on.
Hey, well, yeah. I'm trying for the good of the sport here.
Yeah. Optimism. All right, so continuing on with WRC Finland. Well, you put it here at Tanak put on a clinic, didn't he?
He was in another world. I mean, everybody said, didn't they, when they would interview drivers at the end of the stage, they would make a comment about their performance, and then nearly everybody said, well, Tanak's on another planet. He was so in his zone that weekend. Everything must have been in slow motion for him, because he was just like so centered, so focused, and he was just a totally different driver to everybody else. It was fantastic to watch.
Definitely fantastic. Yeah. Now I've had a chance to see Oit at Rally Poland a year ago, and unfortunately it was the event where he crashed out 2 stages from the end, leading the rally. But even there, you can really see a guy that could definitely be the next world rally champion.
So obviously he's melded well with this Toyota team. He's melded well with the car. What does this say about the future of Jari-Matti Latvala then?
Well, I can tell you a comment that Chris Atkinson made at, I believe it was in Oregon, is where, when you're building a new car and you're using a certain driver to kind of build a car around him and build a car for him, sort of like Subaru Rally Team USA built the rally car for David Higgins and build it around him. When Chris jumps into it, it's going to take him a while to figure out what he needs to change to adapt for his driving style. And I think Jari might have that difficulty, adapting or changing these things to make that car work for him as it is working for Oit.
But he's been in the team since its inception, though. That's what makes it a little bit harder to understand. You'd think they would have built it more around him, but then again, the car was developed initially prior to him, I guess, with a lot of test driving, right, being done by Juho Hänninen.
Younger drivers, faster, adaptable,
Oh, that's a good
stuff.
point.
That's another kind of segue to Subaru. Our engineer for RallyCross team, Michael Zotos, worked on a lot of those aerodynamic parts on the Toyota that they use in WRC.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, could that be why we see a lot more little fins and things like that on the Rallycross car?
Yeah, and you mentioned the downforce. We've had not a problem, but we were trying to figure this out last weekend at the Canadian ARX event, where the long straightaway, where you're almost reaching the max speed of the car, we were definitely seeing that drag creating with the spoiler and all the square different body panels that was creating problems. And we had to tape up the vents, the new vents that's on top of the roof, and on Patrick Sandel's actually Rallycross car. You can probably see it when it's on TV, or if you watched it live. We cut down the center portion of the spoiler to kind of reduce the drag.
Some just quick on-site adjustments to do drag reduction. Well, I mean, that makes sense. If you're going to be able to hit the top speed of that car, that's going to change quite a bit when you've got all that drag on there. So, yeah, if you can lessen that in those high-speed sections without affecting, too much the rest of the how it acts in the rest of the course, that's definitely beneficial. That's cool though. You guys got one of the Toyota guys that over on your team. That's
we have two of the Toyota guys on now on the team, and both are Greek. Michael Zotos is one of the main engineers on the team, and there's a younger engineer that was actually at New England Forest Rally, Stefanos. He's sort of our new up and coming rally engineer.
One of the cars that we've seen have a lot of engineering issues over the last couple of years as the 2017 spec has been the Citroen team, and Mads Osberg got to jump in the seat to replace Chris Meek. He's there for the rest of the season. They made a pretty big change, adjusting the entire I guess the front geometry, or was it it's a wider track at the front is what they said. Mm-hmm. Is how they put it. So basically that would affect steering angles and all that stuff, right? So making the car, I think, a little bit easier to drive, maybe. So, and affecting the balance, obviously, quite a bit through the corners, and the stability for sure. And Mads obviously felt comfortable in that change right away.
Yeah, for sure he did. Yeah.
I was not expecting. I do a little bit of fantasy WRC stuff, and Mads Osberg was not in my top 5. Boy, was I wrong.
No,
it's good to see him back. Obviously, we all love Chris Meek, because he's kind of like, a Steve Arpin of WRC, with this guy that's lovable and everyone likes him. But, Matt is sort of like the goofy one, and he definitely put up a show, and I, it wasn't much that he was, missing from Oit. Obviously Oit was another level, but at some stages that it was pretty close.
Yeah, Matt was well and truly happy. You'd see his little videos that he did at the end of the day, and he would always be happy and smiling and cheerful. So he really was having a heck of a good time. Yeah.
I don't think I've seen him that happy at a rally in a long, long time.
Yeah.
And obviously, building that confidence affects your performance all the way down to that power stage. And him ended up, making sure that he solidified his second place on the podium. I mean, he just... what a great performance, and what a great power stage too. If you haven't watched the WRC Plus, that was a pretty fun one. That was a good one to see everybody pushing it all the way to the very end for sure. One of the teams though that didn't get everybody to push to the limit because good old team orders came into play was the M Sport team. Thoughts on team orders? I mean, it makes sense to me. Here's my thoughts. If Elfyn Evans had performed better earlier in the season to where he was right up there with a chance, then team orders wouldn't be a thing. So he kind of put himself in that position, in my thought.
I don't know. He's like the first choice is Ogier. If no matter whether Evans would have to have been doing like really, really well to have team orders working on his behalf. But the thing was, but Ford were perfectly placed. They had their cars running 4th, 5th, and 6th, so they could play with that running order willy-nilly. I mean, Neuville was back in 9th, and Padden was 3rd, 4th. Well, where was Padden? Was Padden 3rd?
No, he wasn't on the podium.
No, he wasn't. So Padden...
4th.
So, yeah, 4th. So Ford were running 5th, 6th, and 7th. But Hyundai were running 4th and 9th. So, they couldn't even have implemented... I'm sure they would have loved to employ team orders so they could have got more points for Neuville, but they weren't in the position to do it. So, I mean, Ford were running with their cars consecutively. So, I mean, I didn't really have any problem with it. It's all about getting Ogier the maximum points to defend his title. So
it's always difficult, in my opinion, with team orders because that creates sort of a sour atmosphere inside the team. I always think about when I hear team orders. I always think about 1995 and the fight for the championship between Colin McRae and Carlos Sainz. It never ended well, for the whole team. So yeah, it's tough, and maybe in the situation wasn't so bad because of the positions were so much lower in the top 10. But again, it's tough to be in a situation where you have to be the guy to slow down and let your teammate go by.
Yeah. It's Sunanen that I feel the worst for, because it was his home rally, and he's having to bow down to other driver, to Ogier. So I kind of feel sorry. You could tell looking at him, he was really disappointed, but it is what it is.
So one other thing on the M Sport team is we noticed a few extra bits that were on the M Sport car of Sebastian Ogier. None of the rest of the team had those bits on their car because I guess they didn't have enough spare parts, knowing how many would be lost probably out on the stages. It looked a little bit more like some of the bits that they have on the Toyotas, really, to be honest. Some like the little louvered stuff that they had over the rear wheel arches and stuff like that to direct airflow. I think it was you, Ian, that posted that they have a little bit of an article of how they wind tunnel tested this thing. Was it back here in the States?
Yeah, it's an example of Ford Performance getting involved now, isn't it? That Ford Performance opened up their big old wind tunnel for testing. So I'm a little bit shocked that after this bout of wind tunnel testing, they made these new parts and tested them in the heat of competition. I'm sure that Ogier would have probably liked a few more hours on using them on a test stage somewhere, rather than to be jumping in the heat of competition to test these out. And you could tell at the end of a couple of stages, they asked him if he wished he'd had the old aero package, and he kind of like said no comment. So he was I think he would rather have had a bit more of an opportunity to try these out.
I'm really interested to see what their decision is going to be for Rally Germany, because with the experience that the Ford Performance engineers from Charlotte, North Carolina have, on the asphalt, maybe that would work out better for that event.
Yeah,
I don't know. Really, it looked like it didn't really work out for him well. And they did those tests, I believe, in early April in the wind tunnel. So it's a little gap from the time that they actually say, okay, this is the package that we're gonna present to FIA to get approved.
I'm starting to be a little concerned here that we're getting near some of the limits of what the Fiesta can do versus some of the competition. But then again, seeing the fact that Ford Performance is starting to help out with things like this, maybe there is another life left in the Fiesta, because that's one thing that I always felt what was unfortunate for M Sport is, before the new regulations and them having an opportunity, in my opinion, I think that was their best opportunity for a long time to win a championship, was because they were having a chance to get the rules right until, it's kind of like F1 in that respect, right? You have a regulation in place, those teams with all the money, and I mean all the money, right? If they get all that funding behind them, they can keep finding all those little improvements that are only 1% here and 1% there, but it all adds up and ends up creating some domination. And I'm a little concerned that, M Sport trying to keep up with the more heavily funded teams for sure, but this provides some hope with the Ford Performance backing and doing some wind tunnel stuff. And if there's any place that Aero's going to make probably the biggest difference, going to be on the tarmac for sure. So, excited to see that.
Hey, not that long ago, we were talking about Citroën, being, just like of a underdog and stuff, and look what happened in Finland. You never know. I think that M Sport with their guys, they can turn around, and that championship is still pretty open.
That's a very good point. And then, of course, there's the guys there in Hyundai. I must say, I couldn't I couldn't feel better for how good a performance that Padden put in. Other than him maybe being on the podium, which would have been even better, I guess. But Hayden Padden has had the short end of the stick, I think, with that team for a while. He's had some unfortunate things happen to him. Some his fault, some not. I really think he is someone that could be, a future contender. He finally got to show what he's capable of. They have a strong team, but
maybe too strong.
Yeah, well, maybe that's a good point. Yeah, they've got such a strong group of drivers. How do you decide when everybody's? I think almost everybody except for maybe Thierry's contract is up at the end of the year.
You never know. It could be like the Ricardo leaving Red Bull and going for Renault. It could be something happen at the end of the year.
If nothing else, this makes another team, maybe a Citroën, maybe a somebody else that thinks that maybe we need Padden over on our side. So I think he is worthy of a full-time ride for sure, instead of doing this part-time garbage. So, all right, wrapping up our little bit of Finland, you want to talk about artificial jumps, huh?
Oh God, I hated that final jump at Ruimarki. It was dreadful. I mean, it was just like, the organisers had decided that, we don't have the big jump at Unimpoya. So what are we going to do? Let's make a big jump right at the very end, and we'll put seats around it. We'll make a big spectacle of it. No, that's not rally. You know, this was this spectacle, this debacle that they put on at the end of Rui Markey was Ricky Michael AMA Supercross rubbish. I mean, why didn't they have the guys, the drivers, wind their windows down and wave in midair? You know, that wasn't rally. I hated it. I mean, I know people like to see long jumps, but it's not rally. I'd much rather watch a car navigate a section of curves, you know, watch the lines in and out of the apexes of the curves. This was just nothing for me. It was just totally created for television with the drone cameras watching everything, and it was just awful. I'm sure the TV production crew thought it was great when the rear wing fell off Ogier's car. I bet they thought, wow, what great television. This is going to pull people into watch.
Well, to be fair, he shredded that in the previous left-hander where he went too wide and dug it into the dirt bank. So
but
that was going to come off on a long straight, let alone a jump.
But it fell off on the jump, and that was the important thing. But you know, I really didn't like the artificial jump there at all. And if rally is going to go that way, then that's a bad thing.
Strong opinion there, Ian.
Hey, it's getting late. I've not got much sleep.
It must be the podium beer. Oh,
that's right.
Well, the only one thing I have to say is STPR waste management stage. We have a jump like that, you know, not as big as it was in Finland, but it was also, you know, man-made, and it wasn't there in the original running of the stage. So it brings people to that one spot, a lot of people to that one spot, and you know, unfortunately, and especially in US, where it's really tough to get people out to the stages and get them out and explore and kind of like, you know, can I get in here and can I get in there, kind of read the map. They really have to have a kind of clear direction. Go here, you're gonna see a car flying, and people will enjoy it. Yeah, you may not agree with it, but I guess it brings people into the rally.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't mind about this, I like that they had the flying finish was before the jump. I thought that was kind of cool because it kind of got people to start pushing for it instead of somebody kind of going weak over the darn thing. That does make it exciting. Is it for TV and for spectators? Yes, it is. Do you like sponsors? Great. Guess what? Sponsors usually pay for being out there to that kind of thing. And something, Ian, you have actually agreed on in the past is that promotion is good for rally. And the more promotion, the more sponsors actually brings down costs in the end for events.
Absolutely.
And things like this are things you can promote. And from that promotion comes sponsors and all of the rest of it. So as much as I understand your frustration of it being a quote-unquote fake jump, okay, maybe it wasn't built the right way to make it look, maybe it looked a little hokey, but jumps I don't think are a bad thing if they're not made dangerous. You know, we saw where jumps can cause damage and things like that. This was not one of those.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was built right as far as the structure of it.
Oh, yeah, there was probably a lot of technical engineering.
The setting of it wasn't very pretty, I'll give you that. The waste management jump that Greg talked about, that's still kind of actually in an area where there's trees in the background and whatnot, and it looked okay. This looked like it was Ruamaki. It looked like it was kind of in an area where there was like a gravel pit or something. So you're right. It wasn't the prettiest location for one, but other than that, I had no issues with it. It was totally fine.
I have no problem with jumps in a natural location, but this one was just too artificial, and they'd probably have.
So if you built a fake jump in the forested part and still allowed people to watch it, that would be okay.
No, don't build a fake jump. Take the natural contours and the lie of the land. If there isn't a jump there, then there isn't a jump there. But I mean, people will come to a jump. If there's a jump.
Well, no, not when you've got private land and you can't get people there.
Well, yeah.
So there's the thing, right? Is you've got to have ingress and egress out access to these locations.
Yeah.
As an organizer, that's one thing you have to think about. So it goes beyond just the fact that find where the cool natural jump is and somehow just magically get people teleported there. There's a lot more to it than that.
Well,
so,
yeah.
But yeah, I see your point as well. So yes, next event, Germany. Go to tarmac. Well, I think Neuville is definitely going to be one of the greats on that one.
My money is on Dunny Sorda.
Oh, see him get a win. That would be really cool. He's made a couple of mistakes the last couple of years, it seems, out there in Germany. But let's hope it goes well for the old guy. We had just a couple other little bits of rally news, but I'm going to skip most of those, and I think we should talk about the America's RallyCross and World RallyCross stuff. So you were up there in Trois Rivières, Greg?
Yes, I call it Three Rivers because my tongue doesn't do that thing.
That's okay. I cannot pronounce half of the Polish names of some of the drivers and co-drivers we see. So, touche.
Oh yeah. My friend Kajetanowicz is going to be in Germany in the WRC2 car. He was just testing on Sunday right before the event. But quickly to ARX, great track. The length of it was, I think, pretty perfect to the setup. It's probably the closest to a proper rallycross track that we have in North America. Whatever they are trying to do in Austin, it doesn't really work, and it's not really working out, even though they had Peter Solberg involved in building that track. In my opinion, that track in Three Rivers is a lot better. Still a big difference from our American supercars and the World RX supercars. Just the way they handle, and they're a lot shorter, and it's just it's another level for sure. They're about 1.7 seconds faster a lap than our cars.
Oh wow, yeah, per lap. That's that's a little harder. What I really liked seeing out there was, of course, you have Ken Block out there with. Gosh, I'm losing his name.
Steve
Arpin, thank you. I love Steve. He's a great guy. He's really fun. Just getting late in the evening, as you guys are saying. Anyway, so I love that we have Ken Block and Steve Arpin out there in the Ford Focus RSRXs, because that's at least of a same scale of car as the Subarus. And you saw some great competition between Patrick Sandell and Ken Block there, really kind of getting close, and also with Steve Arpin, being one-upped at times. So here we have at least a platform that is of similar size. I think the VW guys need to be forced to change to a Jetta.
I like that idea.
Because they have that shorter wheelbase that, basically like the Fiesta previously had. I actually looked it up. The current WRXs have almost the same wheelbase as my 2005 Subaru Outback.
Yeah, it's a
within
big car.
like 2 inches. It's big, right? Whereas the previous WRXs from that era of 2005, the Bug Eyes and the Hawk Eyes and all that stuff, was 98 inches, which is pretty much right at where you've got for the Volkswagen Beetles. So it's hard to have competition close when the cars aren't that close in their design. And I think that's where I like seeing that Focus out there, which is a similar size. And so I think, obviously, Andretti's Autosport's been great. They're a huge promoter. They're a huge, they've moved along to this ARX and helping with that move to ARX with Subaru. We like those guys. We love those guys, right? But we would really like them to have a similar platform.
No, absolutely. Having same guy win, event after event after event, it doesn't really help the series either. We have a lot of great guys, great engineers working on it. And, as you can see, as you mentioned, the gap has, has been shrinking. So little by little, maybe I'll get there.
Well, hoping so. Definitely hoping so. That was definitely like you said, that track is my favorite in North America. You've got the elevation change bit, I guess, as they kind of dive down to the dirt area from being on the tarmac. You have a long tarmac section that's more like a drag race. It's got a little bit of everything in there, and I like the format. I really like the World Rallycross format and how they do it. Maybe if we could add a few more laps, maybe to make tire management a thing at the end would probably be a little more interesting for the final. But also, you're trying to fit within a time scale of TV. And
Fuel also. It's a longer track, and those cars barely carry fuel enough for eight laps max probably at this time.
Right. Okay, that makes sense too. But I like the length of track though. I want the tracks to
Yeah.
be about a mile long instead of 0.6 or whatever it is. I think
Correct.
it's just too short and too tight.
Yeah, most of the European rallycross tracks are longer like that. I think that one of the shortest tracks is in Portugal, but it still has so many turns in it, and it has a long straightaway too. So yeah, most of the tracks are very similar to what it is in Three Rivers, and I think the drivers really enjoyed being there, and I think the ARX drivers really enjoyed the new format. From the previous championship. So it's good.
So we also had the World RX was competing there, not just ARX, and something that was competed in both of those series by young Connor Martell.
Yeah, I've said it yesterday. Last year I've had a chance to co-drive for Connor in Tall Pines Rally and Big White, and he showed great speed and awesome performance there, and he's a very, very talented driver. He's coming from a supercross, motocross background. Did really, really fantastic job. Won the doubleheader in ARX. Was second running in the final in the World RX too, and unfortunately going for the pass for the lead, hit a tire wall and broke control on, but otherwise he was great.
Yeah, he definitely seemed to dominate in the ARX side of it. Came out, he's I think 3 for 3 events winning. So in the ARX 2, I should say, in the sport series, it's probably not too much longer before he graduates into the bigger car with the performance that he's been showing, which is really great to see. And of course, we've seen him in stage rally cars now, and he's enjoying that quite a bit as well. That kid's got a hell of a future ahead of him. Well, it was a great event. I know the America's Rallycross, you can watch all of that on YouTube, or it should be coming up on CBS Sports. I believe we'll be showing that at some point in the next week or so. There's a bit of a delay, I think, before those things actually come on the TV. But you do have that, like I said, you can just stream it on YouTube. World RX, that is only on CBS because it is geo-blocked for U.S. viewers. If you wanted to stream it, I think there's a pay service or something like that. But you can wait for that to come up on CBS Sports if you have that in your cable package, of course. I think that about wraps it up. We've talked about literally everything over the last few weeks. We had a lot to catch up on.
I feel like this was like 3 shows.
Yeah.
We just got a lot to say. There's a lot that happened, But I guess that's rally. There's always a story. There's always something going on. If I had a chance to do 3 shows a week, I could probably narrow it down.
I hear you there. I had the privilege of running my own show. It was called Rally Notes, and it was like a first and up and coming live YouTube thing, and it was like 5 years ago, and I had a chance to be like on the real studio in Manhattan, and it was only half hour, and it was really, really tight to like get through everything in this 30-minute block. So I don't know where you're coming from.
Yeah, 30 minutes. It's you could barely get a guest on the show and get anything out of them. All right, quick highlights. Okay, next commercial. Now done. Bye. Yeah, it's definitely tough stuff, but that's the nice thing about a podcast. We can make it as long or as short as we want, and, folks can hit pause, can stop it, play it back later. Greg Dorman, thank you so much for being on the show. Any final words, you and Ian?
Once again, thank you very much for having me. It was a real pleasure. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. No, it's like, are you coming up to Ojibwe?
I don't know yet. Might be a surprise visit.
All right. Well, I shall. Well, we'll be looking out for you. I'll be looking out for Mike, anyways. But yeah, getting it's what is it? 2 weeks to Ojibwe. Getting excited for that now for me. So I'm going to have to buckle
just
down.
About now, you should start prepping notes. Time to start getting your stuff going, your recce plan, all that, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Well, I'm going to bed now, but I'll be working on that tomorrow.
Good luck out there.
Hey, thanks a lot.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to this very long RallyCast. A lot of good stuff here. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, at Open Paddock. For Ian Holmes and our special guest presenter, Greg Dorman, I'm your host, Mike Shaw. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a good day.